These are the final moments of United Health CEO Brian Thompson's life.
It appears the suspect was lying in wait for several minutes.
I hear the 3 shots.
The words deny, depose, and defend were written on shell casings left behind at the scene of the shooting.
New images released show the person of interest.
A massive manhunt is underway.
The net is tightening, and we're going to bring this person to justice.
He is no hero.
He made a comment, but that looks like the shooter from New York.
This is our first look at who officials believe was the gunman.
Mangione wrote, "Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming."
Completely out of touch and insult the intelligence of the American people.
Welcome to this Fox 5 special, The Mangione Manhunt from Midtown to Altoona. I'm Lisa Evers. We're taking a look at this case that has galvanized attention across the United States and around the world. We're giving you kind of a big picture look at what this is all about. There's a lot of talk about it on social media. We're looking at the facts. We're looking at the evidence. We're looking at what is actually going on here with our Fox 5 reporter, Michelle Ross, who was in Altoona, as well as our Fox 5 cameraman, David Corporon, who was one of the first on the scene in those moments, minutes actually, after CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in Manhattan. So stay with us. We've got a lot for you. But first, we're going to try to break down this whole timeline of what happened so we know just what we're working with here. Michelle, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the case starts, the shooting, 6:45 a.m. Mangione allegedly shoots Brian Thompson on the street at 6th Avenue and 53rd Street, in that vicinity, right on the side street of the Hilton Hotel. When you first heard that this had happened, what did you think when you heard that location?
Well, to hear of it in that, Midtown, we don't really hear of shootings in that area. Yeah, they happen every once in a while, but, for it to be such a secluded area, it definitely rose some questions.
Right. So the shooting happens then. 6:48, the suspect enters Central Park by bicycle at the 60th Street and Center Drive entrance. 6:58, he passes another camera. And these are some of the things from the surveillance video that the police had, because one of the other things you need to keep in mind about this area is that this is probably one of the most intensely video surveilled areas in the world, because there's cameras not just from the NYPD on stop signs and stop lights. They're also linked into this system with what they call their stakeholders. So every bank ATM that has a video camera, every store that has a camera, the NYPD has the ability to link in with that. So they must have had thousands and thousands of hours of video to comb through.
When he went to Central Park, I think that also made a lot of people perk up and think, all right, was this thought out when he went into Central Park thinking that he wouldn't be caught? It would kind of throw off some officers as he was going on his escape route.
Absolutely. And then there was an e-bike, the e-bike that he jumped on. He ends up going to the George Washington Bridge. This is a couple of days later, hops on the bus, and then begins this saga that ends up in Altoona, Pennsylvania, in that McDonald's where he thinks nobody's going to notice him. And this is when the employee spots him and calls the police.
Right, and the question still remains is how did he end up in Altoona? You mentioned the George Washington Bridge, hopping on a bus. Altoona does have a Greyhound bus stop, so authorities are still looking into that.
And then, of course, if he's taking a bus, he's not going through a search. There's no weapons search. There's a much less, just less security in general. And he can travel much more anonymously.
And you can pay with cash too at the stop. So it depends on, how, and he also had the cash on him. So it depends, the question is, did he have all this cash on him to pay for his transportation in cash?
Right, because when he was found in Altoona, tell us about that, because he had the cash on him, he had the fake IDs.
Right, and so when he gets to Altoona, it still remains a mystery as to
on
how
day
he
6.
got
This
there.
is on day 6 after the shooting.
Right, it still remains a mystery as to how he got to Altoona.
The actual route.
Right, and then maybe he took local buses from there. Say he did get off the Greyhound bus, but he did have all this money on him and also the fake IDs. And it's the same fake ID allegedly from when he checked into the hostel on the Upper West Side.
When you got the call, I assume on 911. What happened?
I remember when I get the phone call of the individual that was shot by the Hilton Hotel. Immediately, the first thing I asked was the person a tourist or not. Fast forward to a couple of days later where we were in the conference room And Chief Kenny presented some photos of the suspect to her. And immediately she said, we need to get these photos out there right now, like yesterday.
Michelle, this investigation involved hundreds and hundreds of detectives working many hours around the clock, looking at thousands of hours, from what police sources told me, of video, surveillance video. And in the end, it was 2 images that really led to his capture.
Right, and in the first few days of this investigation, we only had 1 photo, and that was the photo of surveillance video from the hostel, from the hostel employee, the woman behind the desk who, asked him to put his mask down. We were told by officials that she was kind of flirting with him, but she also has to match IDs with faces of people that come in there. So it's possible, people are saying maybe it was some professional flirting, telling him to, put down his mask, let me see your handsome face, whatever it may have been to match those photos. But that was the only image we had for the first few days.
And Michelle, that's one of the big questions for the investigators too, is how did he know at that, this was 6:45-ish in the morning. How did he know at that particular moment that Brian Thompson would be walking in that doorway, in that entrance, because that's a side entrance to the Hilton, which has several entrances. How did he know that? Were there collaborators? Were there other people that were giving him information? Did he do research and what went on to that? And there's still so much to know about this.
Right, and in his manifesto, he tells feds, I'll save you time, I worked alone, but we still don't know that for sure, but still in the very early stages. So a lot we'll find out as this plays out.
Right, and police said pretty much from early on that, once he was arrested, is that he exhibited in the manifesto these anti-corporate feelings, the whole healthcare issue, which we'll see unfold a lot more, I'm sure.
That's completely out of touch and insult the intelligence of the American people and his lived experience.
Right, and he, against the American healthcare system, and it's something a lot of people were saying that they can resonate with, issues that they've had with medical insurance being denied, claims being denied. So interestingly enough, he's also being portrayed to some as a hero in some ways. But of course, authorities are saying anyone who carries out any homicide is a danger to society.
In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero.
We have much more for you on our Fox 5 special, the Mangione Manhunt from Midtown to Altoona. When we come back, we're going to hear from the Fox 5 cameraman who was one of the first on the scene in those moments after CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down on a Midtown Manhattan street. That's next. Welcome to this Fox 5 special, the Mangione Manhunt from Midtown to Altoona. I'm Lisa Evers, and we have the pleasure right now of talking with one of the top cameramen here at Fox 5 in New York, somebody I've worked with on a lot of crime stories. And when I heard his involvement with this particular case, I was like, wow, I got to talk with Dave and check in with him. So we're going to talk with him right now because he had a bird's eye view early on, right after this crime happened. And Dave Corporon, thank you so much for being with us.
No problem.
Really appreciate it. First of all, how did you find out that something like this had happened?
Well, normally when I'm at work in my news car, I have the scanners on. It's just something I've done for a long time. It's kind of in my blood. So, listening to the police and fire radios is that benefit that you can hear firsthand when something is going on. When something gets phoned in and gets routed to the precincts, you hear it first, and that's how you respond. So, that morning I heard over the scanner a report of a person shot at 6th Avenue between 53rd and 54th Street. And the address they gave, I knew it was the Hilton Hotel because I'm very familiar with that area. So right there, the radar goes up because that's just not the kind of call that would be like a prank or something like that, which may happen on other occasions. So, I'm very in tune with the fact that possible person shot. So now I switch my radio to the precinct frequency so I can hear when the first unit arrives on the scene. So within 30, 40 seconds of the initial call coming out, the first unit arrives on the scene, and they're hollering that they have a person shot in the chest, they actually said, and rush the ambulance, and this is what's going on. So I happen to be very close. I was at 50th Street and 8th Avenue, so I was just around the block.
So you come upon the scene and tell us what happens, because this was on one of the side streets, right, that this
Correct.
happened, the main scene?
Right. So the scanner, the initial report was 6th Avenue between 53rd and 54th, which is the main address for the hotel. That neighborhood is nothing but it's like you said, 30 Rock, you've got hotels, you've got office buildings, and lots of tourists, and everyone just going to and from work. So
Right.
yes, it's a very high-profile area, not the average place that you would hear a report of a person shot. So that's why it was paramount to get there, sooner than later. So when I pulled up, I parked on 53rd Street right off the corner, got out of the car with my gear, and I'm heading towards the main entrance, and there's no activity. So I'm like, okay, well, I know this is going on, but where? But we went around the block onto 54th Street, and you could see there was activity. So I went about 50 yards down the street, and you could see two police officers leaning over what obviously was the victim. One of the officers was giving chest compressions and going through life-saving techniques just to try. The ambulance hadn't arrived yet. So I was there.
So you were there really early.
I was there probably 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes max from the actual time of the shooting.
Incredible.
Yeah. So they were working on them. They were trying their best. The other cops were kind of scrambling around, hoping, waiting for the ambulance to come in. And you don't, in that situation, you don't want to be too close. The thing with stories like this, if you get there quick, you can get a lot more than you can once a situation is under control and they start locking off the perimeter. So I pretty much could do whatever I wanted, but at the same point, I didn't want to get too close. So I was standing kind of in the middle of the street while they were doing their thing on the sidewalk.
And where was the victim?
So the victim was on the sidewalk, just away from the doorway to the Hilton Hotel, the side door.
So literally this happened right as he was walking into that door.
Yeah, exactly. So he had been shot, and looking later at the video, he had obviously staggered just past the entrance to the doorway, but that's where the cops were treating him. So I stayed far enough away to not be in their way and not to get kicked out, but also I wanted to be in a position where I could do my job and get the video I needed. The only unfortunate thing with a scene like that, it was very graphic. I mean, blood. You could see I could see the blood on his shirt. He was well dressed, sports coat, slacks, but he's also the position of his body. He's facing me, so there's that. You see the chest compressions taking place. It's just a very graphic scene, and ultimately something we had to kind of blur just to take a little bit of the edge off.
And not as clean as it looks in TV shows or movies when they do it.
Correct.
Because he was shot in the back and he was lying on his back.
Correct.
When they're giving him the chest compressions and extreme life-saving measures.
Correct. So then the ambulance pulls up, and they rush over with the stretcher, and they literally picked him up, lifted him and dropped him on the gurney because time was of the essence at that point. And that in itself was graphic too, because you could just see his hand sort of flop off to the side.
Over the side
Over
of it.
the side.
Were his eyes open? Did he seem conscious at all?
No, there was no. I mean, I don't know if he still was clinging to life or whether he already passed from the wounds, but he was unresponsive.
And then emotionally, because people always ask me this too after we've done a very intense and very tragic story. You're doing your job, you're feeding in the video, you're trying to be respectful, you're trying to stay out of the way of the paramedics and the police, but still do your job, which is to record this moment, which is turning out to be a very significant, more than any particular crime, a much bigger story. How do you deal with that afterwards? Does there come a point like when you get home and you finish up and you're like, wow, that was, it's just life is precious, or it's just...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a little bit of reflection, but I think also for as long as I've been doing it, I mean, I've been 41 years now, and in the beginning of my career, I worked for a company where all we did was work on the overnights, and we went and chased the police and fire stories.
Radio runs.
Yeah, and we would sell the footage that we got to the TV stations, because back then, they weren't up, their crews were not working overnight, so we provided an invaluable service. So you really become desensitized overall, because I have seen it
so much.
I mean, like hundreds of times, shootings, stabbings, general crime scene stuff. And a lot of times you're there on the ground floor when it's still unfolding.
When it's still going on and we still don't know what happened. And we're glad you're still there. I'm glad you're still there because I worked with you many, many times on many big stories. And thank you for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. Incredible. Thank you. This is the Mangione Manhunt from Midtown to Altoona. I'm Lisa Evers. We're back right after this. Welcome back to our Fox 5 special, the Mangione Manhunt from Midtown to Altoona. I'm your host, Lisa Evers, and we're joined right now by one of my colleagues, Fox 5 reporter Michelle Ross. She was in Altoona when the suspect was brought before the judge and talking with the people in that McDonald's which basically gave this story the biggest break ever so far, right, Michelle?
Absolutely, yeah. That McDonald's became the focal point of this story. This McDonald's here in Altoona is where that 6-day manhunt came to an end. It's also now the center of death threats for employees, as many Americans are now sympathizing with Mangione, who is currently being held at a correctional facility about 40 minutes away, as he and his defense attorney are challenging extradition.
What was it like? You're rushing from New York to Altoona the day that he's taken before the judge. What was that like?
Well, first, we didn't know where he would end up, right?
Right.
But it would make sense, small city. Maybe he thought he wouldn't get recognized. So on the way there, I was just looking up some things about Altoona, and it reminded me of the first TV market that I ever worked in. Very small town. The population was 46,000, still is 46,000 people. So when we got there, the people were very friendly. There wasn't really much hostility, but they were a little shocked, that this suspect was now found in their town, especially in this McDonald's. So for them, a lot of them said that this is their claim to fame now.
So you go to the McDonald's, and this is where the tip came in from an employee, calls 911 after this massive manhunt for Mangione. And then what was it like for you there?
Right. So, going there first in the morning, we had our scheduled morning live shots. So we parked in the parking lot, how we would normally do, but security was tight, and there was a person in a security guard, outfit with a couple of guys in suits that came out, told us we couldn't be here. So no problem. We went across the street, did our live shots. Once it got a little later, got hungry, we wanted to have breakfast. So we went inside, and from the witness that we played on our screens, we had Larry. Larry told us that he and his friends, they go there every single morning. They're regulars, and it was when they noticed that someone in the back looked like the killer, the accused killer.
He made a comment, "God, that looks like the shooter from New York." But I thought the group of us, I thought it was more of a joke.
So me and Roy, our cameraman, we go into the McDonald's, and immediately there are a few customers in there, but I see a group of 8 or 9 older men, and I think that's the group of guys right there.
He's got to be there.
Yeah. So I go and I sit down. There are other open seats, but as a reporter, you want to get close.
Location.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So I sit down over them, and I sit down right next to them, and they're super friendly. I try to make eye contact with them, and immediately they talk to me, and they knew that we were with the press. So I asked them, where was he sitting? And they say he was sitting in the back. So there are 2 dining areas. There's one big main dining area where we were, and then in the back, tucked in the corner by the bathroom, there are about 2 or 3 seats. So they told me that they thought that maybe it was an employee of the McDonald's, because that's where they normally take their breaks. So it would make sense that Luigi Mangione would be in that corner. He didn't want to be seen.
So in terms of the court, what was the scene like around this courthouse in that Blair County courthouse?
So you would imagine that it would be like any other day, where a big crime has taken place. So we get there, and a bunch of press are outside, and it's national press, local press, and there are also some members of the public who are interested to see how this is all playing out. So in our press huddles with the lawyer that's outside, you also have some teenagers, with their cell phones, trying to also get a good look at what's happening and a good listen at what's happening.
And why do you think Mangione chose Altoona?
The best reason I could give is that because it's a small town. I was looking up the population on the way there. 46,000 people live there. Maybe he thought he wouldn't be recognized. Maybe he thought no one would be following the story. But in this digital age of social media, everybody is following what's happening. So the fact that these guys, recognized him says a lot.
And then was security very tight around the courthouse, because you had the local police, you had the Pennsylvania State Police there, the NYPD was there. There was a lot of law enforcement. Was security really tight?
I would say security was tighter at the McDonald's than it was over at the courthouse, believe it or not.
That must have been a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely, especially for the people, the residents of that area.
Wow, that's incredible. So in terms of just the whole scene, what people were reacting to there, did they seem like offended that there was this attention attention on their town, because sometimes smaller towns or smaller cities, they don't like all that kind of attention and they want everybody to go away? Or how was the reaction that you were getting, or just the general vibe?
We actually weren't, met with much hostility. It was actually, our presence was well received. I think that for a lot of people, they just didn't think that this would happen in their small town. They were saying that this is now their claim to fame. So, members of the press, you've experienced this for so long, Lisa. I'm sure, people not happy when we show up to scenes, but that wasn't the case here.
And then their mood, you've told me that they're like shocked. People seem shocked above all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, they just go about their day, go to work and go home. So now that all the cameras, all the flashy lights are here, definitely a shock factor for them.
Now, some people, when they first heard that he had retained this lawyer, tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because he won't say how he was retained. So a lot of us were thinking maybe he went to the jail and tried to communicate with him because he's a very small town lawyer, but he's big in that area. So a lot of people in the neighborhood were saying that he's good at what he does. So we'll see how this plays out. But many on social media are, kind of comparing him to other fictional characters. They're comparing him to Saul Goodman on Breaking Bad. So he is very theatrical. And on social media, when I posted that video on TikTok, they are saying that they can't wait for the theatrics of this trial to play out because he was saying that there is no evidence. And he even told he told cameras, he said, zoom into my empty hands. This is what the evidence is. This is what I've been shown.
Zoom in. I suppose you want to. Nothing.
Thanks for joining us for our Fox 5 special, The Mangione Manhunt from Midtown to Altoona. I'm Lisa Evers. And remember, this story is still in the early stages. There's a lot more to reveal. There's a lot more to investigate. So make sure you keep checking back here with us on the Fox 5 NY YouTube page, as well as the Fox Local app. Take care.